China, the second biggest economy in the world, is in deep trouble. It grew at a pace of only 0.4% in April-June quarter over the last year. This was the worst performance since the March quarter of 2020 when the economy contracted by 6.8% because of COVID. Continuing lockdowns because of its zero COVID policy, slowing real estate market, geopolitical tension, and natural disasters are causing this slowdown. 3 of these crises were man-made. I mean literally. One man, President Xi Xingping, engineered 3 of these problems. Let's see how. Real estate industry is one of the foundations of Chinese growth miracle and is a big part of its economy. An astonishing 70% of Chinese household wealth is now tied up in real estate. The real estate industry accounts for 33% of the country's economic activity every year. For comparison, 25% of American household wealth is tied up in real estate, and the industry accounts for about 15% of American GDP. For the past 4 decades, the property industry has been symbolic of China's unstoppable rise. Private entrepreneurs were allowed to make vast fortunes. Average people saw their net worth soar as home values rose 3 times. Local governments have filled their coffers by selling vast tracts of land to developers. Now this very foundation of the Chinese economic growth model is being shaken. New project starts fell by 45% in July compared with a year ago. Home sales fell by 33% and home prices across the nation fell for the 3rd straight month. The housing crisis has 2 immediate causes. The first is a government crackdown on the excesses of the property industry. Since August 2020, officials have restricted developers' ratios of liabilities to asset, net debt to equities, and cash to short-term debt in a policy known as the 3 red lines. This has forced many to stop unsustainable borrowings and sell down assets, severely limiting their ability to continue building and sell new projects. The second reason for the real estate slowdown is the government's zero COVID policy. The strict shutdowns have stopped people from viewing homes and making purchases, and stopped developers from constructing them. This has also affected the psyche and confidence levels of both buyers and sellers. China's developers are highly reliant on selling homes long before they are built to generate liquidity. Last year, they pre-sold 90% of homes. Typically, property developers collect the full price of an apartment before starting construction. The funds thus collected are used to buy land and to invest in other activities. Just when pre-sales to home buyers have stopped, banks have also reduced their lending to real estate projects. Banking sector exposure to real estate is already high at about 40% and they are worried about it. So until they have new customers to sell to, developers do not have access to cash flow and they cannot deliver completed projects to their existing customers. Which is why The Economist magazine called the industry Ponzi-like. Evergrande, the world's most indebted developer, defaulted in December 2021 on its $300 billion debt. At least 28 other property companies have missed payments to investors or gone into restructuring. Trading in the shares of 30 Hong Kong listed developers constituting 10% of the market by sales has been frozen. Construction has slowed down or completely stopped. Potential homebuyers have dropped out of the market. Far more worrying is the fate of millions of people who have already paid. They have been waiting patiently for their homes to be delivered for many years now. Just 60% of homes that were pre-sold between 2013 and 2020 have been delivered. Analysts were aware of these funding problems, but they thought government will come to their rescue if something goes wrong. But that has not happened, and homebuyers are protesting by boycotting mortgages. Some have even taken to the streets. This is very unusual in China. Chinese people don't protest against their government, let alone on the streets. Not only that, the local government is taking measures to restore the confidence of home buyers, which is in direct contradiction to what the central government has been trying to do with its 3 red lines policy. Even some parts of the central government in Beijing are also contradicting Xi Jinping's policy by reducing mortgage rates and prime rates. This is very unusual in China. Local governments don't contradict the central government in China. Unlike in the US, where Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida contradicts the policy of President Joe Biden. The real estate slowdown caused by the three red lines policy is further aggravated by the government's zero COVID policy and strict lockdown. It is so strict that people were stopped from leaving their homes even during a 6.8 magnitude earthquake in Chengdu, a city of 21 million people. The earthquake killed 70 people. In some places, doors, windows, and even fire exits have been welded shut to enforce lockdowns and keep people from leaving houses. Even in places where such draconian lockdowns are not in place, zero COVID policy asks a lot of their citizens. Beijing is open, but its residents must get tested every 72 hours in order to use public transport or enter buildings. Some universities bar students from leaving campus. President Xi Xingping says unimaginable consequences would follow if he were to lift the zero COVID policy. He is worried that if the virus spreads, it could devastate the under-vaccinated elderly population. I thought the Chinese government could force its citizens to do anything. That's how it builds its roads and buildings so quickly. But the government refuses to force its elderly people to get vaccinated. Elderly vaccination rates of 61% have lagged the national average of 90%. Only 60% of those above 80 years old are immunized. These lockdowns have already slowed down the Chinese economy. According to an estimate, lockdowns cost China 3.1% of GDP per month. It has also delayed production, caused labor shortages, and disruptions in logistics. Firms are hiring less. As a result, youth unemployment has touched a record high of 20%. Policy rates are also triggering capital outflows from China, leading to downward pressure on yuan against the dollar. The economic dislocations are now spiraling into the larger world, fueling inflation and disrupting supply chains, triggering a retreat or pause by some foreign businesses in China and increasing external concerns over China's deepening isolation. A recent visit to Taiwan from the Speaker of America's House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, on August 2nd and 3rd triggered a fresh crisis in US-Chinese relations. This is China's fourth such showdown over Taiwan with America in the past 70 years. But the economic conflict with China is unprecedented. After trying to engage and placate China for many years, America under President Trump sharply changed its approach. By the time he left office, America's average tariff on Chinese products had risen from roughly 3% to nearly 20%, according to The Economist. Trump also rolled out economic sanctions against Chinese companies such as Huawei, a telecom giant, and DJI, a drone maker. He also forced TikTok to spin off its American operation. President Joe Biden has not only continued Trump's tough stance towards China, he's also building alliances against it. It ties together countries such as Japan, India, and Vietnam that represent 40% of global GDP. But it excludes China. All of this cannot be good news for China. China is in the middle of the worst heat wave ever recorded. The southwest has also been hit with a devastating drought. Rainfall in Chongqing is down by 60% from seasonal norms. The highest temperatures and lowest rainfall since records began 60 years ago led to severe power shortages across southwestern cities of Chengdu and Chongqing in the province of Sichuan. The combination of heat and drought has increased demand for energy while also greatly reducing hydroelectric generation, on which the region relies. Dams make up about 80% of Sichuan's power generation and nearly 15% nationwide. Hydroelectric output in Sichuan has halved compared with last year. Though local governments have prioritized residential needs, some homes now lose power for several hours a day. 16,000 industries had to shut down between August 15th and 25th because of electricity shortage. Sichuan and Chongqing produce about 6% of China's industrial output. The power cuts have shut down operations in the region at firms such as Toyota, a Japanese car maker, and Foxconn, one of Apple's main suppliers. It has also threatened the supply of parts to car makers such as Tesla in Shanghai. Moreover, because of low water levels on the Yangtze River, ocean-bound cargo ships cannot pass near Wuhan, about 900 kilometers east of the drought area. As a result, many companies based across China are losing access to components usually supplied by manufacturers based in the southwest. This drought could not have come at a worse time for the Chinese economy and is further slowing it down. Chinese economy is strong enough to recover from these multiple crises eventually, but it's hard to say how long the pain will continue. And one thing is for sure, all of this is happening at a very inconvenient time for President Xi Xingping, who's hoping to get re-elected as president of China for the third time. If you like such macroeconomic videos, I recommend you watch this video about the Indian economy, where I analyze its strengths. I'm Sharat Mantrawadi. Thanks for watching.